Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. We're here tonight, and this is our 13th episode. I was reminded that's a big number now in Chiefs Kingdom due to one Taylor Swift, 13. So we're going to consider it a lucky number in our case. And Chris is with us. And Chris, we're ready to roll tonight. We've got some cool things planned, but I think you've got something that you want to spill the beans on.
Yeah, so we have a great guest tonight that I've got a little story to tell to introduce him. When we roll back the clock a little bit, my family, as you know from the last couple episodes, we like to take trips, road trips and vacations. And just so happens, one of our road trips one summer included our guest tonight. We rent a 15-passenger van. There's 10 of us, and we're going to go out Colorado to go camping. And so we all pile in this van, and we have our adventures, and we are traveling. We set up the campsite, and we're having a great time. And one of my jobs was to plan a hike on this trip for all of us to go on. And so I found a hike that you hike up in the mountains back to a waterfall. So we're going to take this hike. And I thought I read that this hike is 3.5 miles long. And so I'm telling everybody in our group that it's a 3.5 mile hike. And it wasn't a 3.5 mile hike. It was 3.5 miles one way and then 3.5 back. So it's a 7 mile trek.
That's a tester.
So there's 10 of us on this trek back into, and the elevation is high. We're getting up in, 11, 12,000 feet back to this waterfall and back. And so getting there, not so bad, but getting back was a struggle. And we're coming back and everybody is tired, thirsty, worn out, mad because they somehow got talked into a 7 mile hike. So I'm up towards the front of our group. And I turn around, and our guest has taken his shirt off, and he's wrapped it around his head like Rambo, and he is in total survival mode, like he's going to have to live in the woods for the night because we're not going to make it back. And from that moment on, I knew our guest had gusto, that everything that he did and would do in his life had flair and a choice for the dramatic, if you would say. And that was one Tucker Franklin. Our families went together on a trip to Colorado, and Tucker was on that trip with us, and it was a great time. And I will always have Tucker pictured in my mind with his T-shirt wrapped around his forehead like Rambo, trying to get out of the woods in Colorado in one piece.
It's kind of foreshadowing because Tucker has a strong T-shirt game.
That's right.
But he usually keeps them on, at least during the podcast, so that's good for him. We do have Tucker Franklin with us tonight, and we're about to jump into that interview, and we are happy to have him with us. He's with KC Sports Network, a graduate of Northwest Missouri State, a native of Trenton, Missouri, played some football here, so he has a lot of roots in North Missouri, loves the Royals, loves the Tigers, loves the Chiefs, and right now he's kind of 24/7 covering the Chiefs. KC Sports Network is really your home for great Chiefs content. It's your home for a lot of cool things going on in the world of sports in the Kansas City area and podcast galore. So I really recommend it. And we're going to get right into this. And we had an interview with Tucker Franklin, and we're happy to present that. Okay, we are thrilled to welcome Tucker Franklin to our show, a Trenton native, graduated from Trenton High School in 2016. Is that correct?
2016, yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Graduated Northwest Missouri State University with a degree in sports media, and he had stints in written journalism, radio, podcast production, and has really developed his brand and now is a full-time content manager at KC Sports Network, which I recommend to anyone listening. A lot of great content, and if you love the Chiefs and Mizzou and soccer and any number of things related to Kansas City sports, it's going to come through that source with a lot of great voices. Welcome to the show, Tucker.
Thank you for having me. Excited I get to be on the show. Very honored that you guys have asked me to be on. I'm glad to come and just chat for a little bit.
Absolutely. We love backstories. We love to talk to folks that are doing things in the world of sports and coming at it from a lot of angles. We've had shows about referees. We've had shows about coaching, and we just love that opportunity, and especially if it has a Trenton connection or North Missouri connection. You've got all those bona fides, and we're happy to have you. We're a fan of your work. I want to talk to you about your upbringing in Trenton, Missouri, and some of the things you did, how you started your career, what you're up to now, and then load a little knowledge on us about Chiefs and Mizzou and Royals. And so what are the first things that made you fall in love with sports? Paint me a picture of what a young Tucker Franklin was doing to get involved in sports?
Oh gosh. I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint the first thing that like I can just always remember being around sports, wanting to do something in sports. Growing all up with my dad's a big Kansas City Royals fan. Baseball was my first love. Baseball was the sport that I loved the most growing up. And I played it all the way up until even through high school with American Legion and everything like that. Even while I was playing football, I was doing summer baseball and everything like that. So baseball was my first love because of my dad. That was a big thing for me. But then once you get the PlayStation, right, you get your Madden and you get to like, oh, what's this football thing? Oh, what what's basketball? Like that's a fun sport too. So it started because of my dad, and then falling asleep every night to Sports Center also helps to light that spark a little bit when it comes to just kind of falling in love with sports, and really ever since I can remember, this is what I wanted to do. Was I wanted to talk about sports, and I see the guys on the TV that get to talk about sports when I was a kid, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And for it to happen has been kind of cool, just to kind of have that to kind of materialize there. But it's been one of those things where growing up and having the coaches that I did, Coach Boswell was very big in helping me get to where I am today. I owe a lot to Coach Boswell and just all the different coaches that I had. Coach Jeremy Austin also was really big. Coach Croy, like all of those names around Trenton High School were very big in helping me decide where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And Northwest Missouri State just seemed like the right option for that. I was accepted into Mizzou, and I was going to Mizzou really until I visited Northwest Missouri State and saw the kind of opportunities that they gave to a lot of underclassmen. Yeah, go Bearcats! Like that's the place to be, because they gave those opportunities to those underclassmen that, at Mizzou, you got to go through your gen eds for the first 2 years, then apply to be in journalism school. And you got to go in right away. And that was one of the things that, my advisor, Stephen Chappell up there at Northwest Missouri State, he was also the advisor for the newspaper. So I was like, yeah, I want to be in sports. I don't know what side, if it's radio, if it's TV. He's like, well, you're going to do newspaper. He's like, you're going to do newspaper. And that's kind of how I started and all of that. And yeah, the rest is kind of history from there. I just kind of caught the itch and just kept pursuing it. And look, a lot of it's right place, right time with who and everything like that. I was very fortunate to intern up at 810 Kansas City during I guess it would have been just before the pandemic, 2019, probably the summer of 2019. Is when all the Tyreek Hill stuff happened. Is when I was at 810. So it was a good time to be around all that stuff going down. But I interned there, met Joshua Briscoe, who I interned with on the night show. We did the night programming for 810 Sports Radio. Not a lot of people listen to the radio at that late at night, so it gave me the opportunity to kind of cut my teeth there a little bit. Josh was very, very gracious in letting me just kind of try things that probably a lot of people who are interning on the daytime shows couldn't try. So again, fortunate and lucky enough to be placed with him, which led me to, working in different fields of writing and covering the Chiefs. I worked with him for a little bit with the Sports Illustrated side of things, digitally, as we covered the Chiefs for Super Bowl that they lost to the Bucs was that year. And then the year after I covered them as well for Sports Illustrated. Then I jumped over to KC Sports Network when they started in 2021. One of those things is something I always wanted to do, and just growing up around sports and now getting to do it, I'm forever will be grateful.
Well, I think Tucker had a great advantage of growing up in the generation that sports was 24/7, readily available. Like my generation and your dad's generation and Jeff's generation, like when we were younger, we still had to get up and find a newspaper to look at box scores and try to get our information that way. And your generation was, do you have a phone? Do you have a computer? And can you watch Sports Center? You knew scores, you knew stats almost instantaneously, and you got to grow up in a great era of, if you wanted to be involved in sports and sports broadcasting and sports information, it was right there for you. You had access to it, and that is pretty cool for us that grew up in a little bit different generation to see how it blossoms, and young people like yourself that get to go out and chase that dream is pretty cool.
Talk about taking the field at CF Russell, wearing that Bulldog uniform. I mean, what was that? What did that mean to a young guy like you?
Well, look, I'll even go back to this year. I was able to get back for, I think this was the first time, because I guess after I graduated high school, I did a little bit of a color commentary with Tom Johnson on Friday Night Lights a little bit. We got to do that a little bit. That was a good time. Love Tom and everything there. I mean, KTTN, they gave me a great opportunity to do a lot of the sports media stuff I wanted to do in high school too, even to that extent. But I was able to go back this year for homecoming and get to kind of be around it again. And it just gets the juices flowing. I tell you what, when you hear that same playlist that you're running out to in 2016, see the guys out there, that was really cool. I can remember Friday nights being a big deal in the city of Trenton. And every Friday night, it was one of those events where, the town shuts down for the football team. And look, in high school, you feel like a big deal. That is a big deal. You look out in the stands, you see it packed. I can remember taking pride, too, in the covered stands. It might seem like a very trivial thing, but I can remember taking pride in the fact that Trenton had covered stands on their home side. Like, not a lot of places in high school football have that. Trenton had that. That was a pretty cool. And also the experience of going underneath the bleachers before the game, just to kind of get yourself mentally ready, hearing everything, hearing all the fanfare that's going on out there. That locker room is one of the last few of the ones where like that is high school football, right? You look at it and you're like, that is Friday Night Lights. That's high school football. And being able to play for some great coaches like Coach Croy I mentioned, Coach Boswell, just two of my just favorite people. Coach Boswell, I was fortunate enough to coach with Coach Boswell at Plattsburgh for a little bit. That he trusted me enough to be on his staff there. And as you know, look, we had a little bit of hard times at Plattsburgh, and that wasn't necessarily the best of years that he had there. But my relationship with Coach Boswell, I can't speak enough about what he's meant to me just as a person. But I think one thing about the football and Friday Night Lights and everything that happens in Trenton is the relationships that you build. And look, I still talk with like Colton Neff, Trey Shields, some of the guys that I went to high school with, and a lot of those relationships were built on the football games, the football practices. That's some of those memories that we still talk about to this day. So I think that means a lot. And it was one of those things that shaped me as a human being as I am today.
You got a Tom Johnson story you want to share with us?
Oh, man. I love Tom so much. Golly. I owe that guy a lot, too, just for what he was able to do for me just in this space, and just kind of he just kind of let me do what I kind of wanted to do. We fed each other off of really well, but I can remember the first time I was up there, and I don't know how much you know, but like I'm keeping stats at the same time. Like I'm tallying, I'm using hash marks and tally marks for rushing yards for this. And I was unaware of that this was happening. And Tom was like, oh yeah, by the way, first game of the season, I think it was at Lathrop though. So nice press box, good little stadium there to do it at. Tom Johnson's like, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to keep rushing yards for both teams. Here's a clipboard and a scrap piece of paper. Just tally mark it up. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that like this was a part of the job, but Tom and I became close over the years, sharing that old KTTN red kidney bean van and driving around all over North Missouri for those couple years that we were doing it together. But man, I do miss that sometimes, going to these small towns with Tom Johnson.
I just sent you a text. If you got your phone near you, check out this picture and tell me what it reminds you of.
We did. Oh yeah.
Coach Travis Mullinex gave me this picture.
Jeff does the research for this show, and you just never know what's going to happen, Tucker. So there you go. I remember that night too. What a great moment in THS bleacher history.
Give me a description of that, of visuals, so that.
So I'm going to give you the visual while Tucker prepares to talk. So we have themes when we do our basketball home nights in the bleachers. And in this picture is Tucker dressed up as a Sports Center anchor, and they have the Sports Center desk, and it's set up in the bleachers for a basketball game. And Tucker is dressed in a suit with a tie and has the microphone and is doing role play with a couple other guys that they're going to broadcast this game live from Trenton High School, and Tucker's the sideline reporter, and I'll let Tucker take it from here.
I remember this was a very last-minute idea. I do remember this. Cade Mullinex came up to me and was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And as you can kind of see on the picture, this is a cardboard news desk held together by athletic tape. And it looks like some stuff that they printed off probably in the computer lab earlier that day during school, taped it on and said, you know what, that's the news desk. But that was a big one. I remember that trend was really big that year. So that would have been my junior year. because there was a lot of going on social media about like other schools doing that. And we're like, we got to do this. And it was one of those last minute things where we saw it, we had to do it. And I believe I think the video lives. You can see Colton over there on the end. Colton Ellis has the camcorder. I think a video exists of me doing an interview. I don't know where it is. I'm sure Jeff will probably find it before this podcast is over. But I think a video does exist. I can't remember who I interviewed, but it was something that we did. I forgot about this. This is a fun time. I was very excited to be able to play like I was a reporter there for a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's what you call foreshadowing, right? When you have pictures like that we can bust out and say the famous broadcaster in his humble beginnings in high school doing cosplay, if you will, of an ESPN live remote.
I love it.
So, yeah, really good stuff. I can remember Tucker always being around and being part of those schemes when we had all sorts of cool theme nights. But when your kids are playing and a part of it and your kids' friends, it always seems like so cool and in the moment. But they had theme nights and they would dress up and they would get after the other teams, players while they were playing on the court, all in good fun. But it just makes for the great high school experience.
I'm sure the administrative sponsor was near that group, just to make sure it didn't veer off.
I will tell you that during this whole run, I would have been the administrator because I was administrator on duty for every, I think, high school game at Trenton High School for basketball for about 10 years in a row. So, yeah, I was probably standing about 12 feet from there, keeping an eye on them.
Look, we had some good teams too. We had some reason to get rowdy with a couple of those basketball teams were really good. I can remember making Sharpie jerseys. Chris Kurtz was one specifically I made for it. I think I had a Chase Tolson one as well. I would take Sharpies and I would make jerseys from white t-shirts I got from like Walmart, or the money I got from working at Hy-Vee I scraped together to make these jerseys of these players to go to, like, I think it was the Gallatin tournament, and we were going there and getting rowdy to support those guys as well. But man, yeah, I do the Bulldog Brigade days.
Bulldog Brigade.
I made a Facebook page. I remember I was so excited when I got to 100 likes, when 100 people liked that Bulldog Brigade Facebook page. I was so excited.
We ordered a banner for the gym that's still in there now that says Bulldog Brigade because you guys were so popular when your crew was in there. And then I got a Facebook memory a couple days ago where I had put down, it was a great night in the THS gym. The girls and boys swept a doubleheader against whoever. It's usually Gallatin this time of year. And the Bulldog Brigade was in full force. And I read that and immediately had all these memories of that banner that we ordered and those kids in the stands doing something funny, right on the borderline of inappropriate, but always appropriate.
Excellent. That's the relationships you're talking about and the memories the crazy things that you did. It's like brothers. 50 years later, you'll still have brothers from those experiences. And you were a good football player, an all-district football player, and a center, which, as we know, has to be the guy making the calls for the offense and be a smart guy. So there's some more foreshadowing. He had to do his research.
Well, I don't know about the smart guy stuff, but yeah, I mean, I guess I was pretty all right. I actually ran into Coach Sager the other day when I was up there, I guess a couple months ago now. But I ran into Coach Sager and we had a little bit of talk. He told me I was the smartest offensive lineman that he had ever coached. And I said, you don't have to tell me that to my face. It's okay. You don't have to lie to me like that. Yeah, I didn't initially want to play in college, but it was one of those things where, not a lot of people are in the market for a 5'6" center. There's not a talent hotbed for that. So look, I understood where I was in terms of my athletic gene pool. But again, I think part of the reason, I did fall in love with the sport of football, and that ended up kind of being my number one sport. I played basketball too. I was not a good basketball player. I just liked to play it because I had fun. And a lot of my friends played basketball. Honestly, you know what? I probably should have wrestled. And my Uncle Ron tells me that all the time. Like my senior year, he's like, you should have wrestled. You shouldn't have been the basketball manager. But look, all my friends were on the basketball team. I wanted to hang out with them, wanted to have fun. But I should have wrestled my senior year. Probably could have been somewhat decent at that. But if I had to regret one thing, it'd probably be that. again, going back to Coach Croy and Coach Boswell, they made me fall in love with the sport of football. And I just had a thirst for knowledge, right, when it came to the game. And that's what one of my favorite things is, learning the scheme. I still read books all the time about just like schemes and coverages and stuff like that. I just think it's wildly interesting, the strategy behind it all. And that all started because of Coach Croy and because of Coach Boswell.
I was talking to Travis last night because I coach with Travis in junior high basketball. And I asked him what kind of golfer you were because I saw your name pop up in my research. And he said he was a hell of a golfer. And he says, I'll just leave it at that. And he didn't give me any detail.
I got it done, man. I tell you what, I got it done. Again, probably should have ran track, but a lot of my buddies played golf.
Let's not get crazy.
There's a common theme there. But
running track. You might have been a thrower like my daughter.
Yeah, I absolutely probably should have been, right? I probably could have made a little bit more scholarship dollars if I would have devoted myself to either of those things. But I wanted to have fun. Look, I still golf to this day, and a lot of the things I think about when I golf are because of Coach Molinex and all the times we had going to Waffle House for tournaments and just hanging out with, Chase Tolson was one of those guys. He's like a big brother to me, truthfully. I mean, I ended up rooming with him when I lived in Maryville. We were both in Maryville at the same time, and we ended up being roommates together for a little bit just before the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, I got laid off from the Maryville Forum, the newspaper there. Chase, that relationship was really built with Chase, through basketball and golf as well, as a big reason that I was a golfer. And just Coach Molinex too. He makes it hard not to want to play whatever sport he's coaching, because he's one of the good ones out there. And
we have fun in the gym every day. I mean, it's just fun to be with the boys, and they love him, and we had a good year this year, so that was good for him. He's had some thin years, and where we were riding back from a 1-point loss at Bishop Hogan, and he tells me, Coach, I'm done with this. I'm going to retire. And I said, you said the same thing last year when we lost by a point. And he goes,
Yep.
I meant it then and I mean it now. But he didn't have to do that this year. We won some games, so that was fun.
These guys are the king of the early morning practice. If you play for Coach Molnick, especially in middle school, it was early morning practice time. And sometimes I'll go in early to work, and those gym lights will be on, and those balls will be bouncing and shoes squeaking. I go, there's Jeff and Travis in there at 6:30 having practice, so they're done in the afternoon. A great sound to start your day for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good way to start. So one of the things you've kind of touched on is that there's not just a lot of job security in media now. It's not just you don't track with one thing and run it out for 25 years like people used to do. And you've done a great job of creating a unique brand. So tell me, what is the Tucker Franklin brand with your podcasting and with your work in content creation at KC Sports Network?
Yeah. I think that's something that I'm legitimately just having a conversation with BJ Kissel about this earlier today when we were at lunch together, about just kind of how to go about things. And I think the best way to do it is just to be myself, truthfully. And that's the one thing that I've found is I can't try to be, Pat McAfee. I can't try to be Stephen A. Smith or any of those guys like that, because it's not going to be, it's going to be inauthentic. I think that's the biggest thing with this in this space. There is a saturation to some point with a lot of the social media, your TikTok, your Instagram, everything like that. It's never been easier to start something, to start following a team or doing a YouTube channel, starting a podcast. It's never been easier. And at some points, it's also never been harder, because there's more competition for everything. There's more stuff you have to figure out about yourself before you can even go in some direction that you want to be. So I think that a lot of times for me, especially during the season, is I've got to kind of lock in, right, on what I do. I got to kind of put blinders in, because look, if I'm listening to Sports Radio 810, love the guys over there, 96.5 The Fan, love the guys over there. If I'm listening to their stuff, I'm letting it influence how I am. I think that that's an injustice to people who want to listen to me, right? So I think the best that I can be is myself, and that's really the only person I know how to be is myself. So that's kind of what I try to do and try to remind myself every day. I don't take myself very seriously. You guys might know that about myself. I never really have taken myself very seriously. And I think that I hope that that comes off in how I portray myself, because I think a lot of times everything in social media and this space can be just taken so seriously. And the less you can take yourself seriously, probably the better in today's world. Sometimes you have to laugh to keep yourself from crying with everything that's going on. But I mean, I think that like that's the approach that I kind of take with it. Like, look, the Kansas City Chiefs, not life or death. As much as some people want you to believe it, that like that this is going to determine how your life is for the next 48 hours, it's really not that serious when it comes down to it. And I just try to kind of keep that in my brand of just like, yeah, this stuff, it's important to you. Like the Chiefs are important, Mizzou's important, like your sports teams are important to you. But in the end of things, it's really not that important. I try to keep that light and as a reminder.
I think one thing that you've really hit on, Tucker, is what a lot of sports personalities try to get to, and that is being authentic. You have to be yourself.
Yeah.
If it looks like you're trying to be something else, people catch on to that quick. Prime example is Charles Barkley, who's always been one of my favorites, and he is super popular right now and has a lot of followers, and people want to listen to him talk. It's because he's authentic. He's Charles Barkley. He's going to say what he wants to say. He's going to be who he wants to be. And then you can either listen or not listen. And he's okay with that. And he, just like you, doesn't take himself too seriously too. Just watch, Inside the NBA and his interviews is he's doing it because he likes to do it, because he has fun, and he doesn't take himself too serious. So yeah, all good points there.
So I got a question. You got some things out on your LinkedIn and your Instagram. Descriptors. I mean, which one of these things jumps off the page at you? I've got Sleepy Boy, CFB Sicko, Little Chiefs Boy, Ice Cold Beer Guy. I think you're pretty famous for that one.
Yep.
White Colin Saunders. I don't know if you.
Yeah. No,
but you're kind of sneaky athletic like Colin was.
Yeah. So I did a cartwheel for charity. So we do a fundraiser every year for the Therese Paylor Scholarship. Therese, I had the great honor to meet Therese before he passed. One of those guys that infectious in just his personality and his love for the game. We do a fundraiser after he suddenly passed away to the Therese Paylor Power Mizzou Scholarship that they have over there at Power Mizzou. And actually, somebody called me the White Colin Saunders because I said, hey, look, if we get $5,000 in donations, I'll do a cartwheel on the stream. And people were like, oh, this is like, you look at me, you don't suspect me to be able to bust off a nice solid round off. And look, my sisters, they did competitive cheer for a while. They danced for a long time. I've seen it. I know how it's supposed to look. I busted off a round off and everyone said, oh my goodness. So I had to add that to the bio. The chat was going crazy with like, you're the White Colin Saunders. I was like, I will take that all day. That is the best compliment that I think, accrue from anything that I do, is that being sneaky athletic is probably the best thing to be complimented by.
There you go. Colin Saunders. He was big Chiefs favorite. Even though he's gone away, people still love him.
I do. I still love him too. He's a great guy too. He did something for us at KC Sports Network. He donated his time actually in one of our raffles for the holiday toy drive that actually we just finished up here with Operation Breakthrough. We raised about I think just over $15,000 for the Christmas store up at Operation Breakthrough. And he donated, I think this was a couple of years ago when he was still in Kansas City, a lunch. We had two fans of KC Sports Network get to go to lunch with Colin Saunders just because he liked the vision that we had here with everything. He's a phenomenal guy. I love Colin.
Hey, one of the things that I remember was you posted a picture from behind the podium of Andy's shoes.
Yes.
And that kind of went viral, didn't it? I mean, just something random like that.
That was at the Combine, I believe 2 years ago. I looked over and I see Andy Reid on the set of, I believe this was probably NFL Network that had their set up right there that I was on. And I see his shoes, and he's got on these like pretty expensive Nike shoes. The Supreme Air Force One is what I believe they are. He still wears multiple pairs of these. That's when they kind of first came out, so they were still kind of popular. So I snapped a picture of it. And what I like too about that picture, if you go back and look at the picture, you can see me in the reflection of like the glass.
There you go.
Trying to zoom in the picture. That's my favorite part of it. But it was on like Complex Sneakers. It like all of these sneaker like websites picked it up and tweeted it out. That gained a lot of like that. Those are that's a throwaway tweet. In my head, I'm just like, I'll just tweet this out because I enjoy this. So maybe people will find it enjoyable. But never did I think that it would go as like popular or viral as it did.
We got the chance to do an interview with Jeremy Barnes, who's the young ref. He's a TikTok sensation. He's a referee at Misha. And he got famous because he was trying to break up a fight, and he goes flying through the area. He gets tripped and goes flying through, and it makes a great video, and he's mic'd up and everything. And that tweet took him from, 10,000 to like 250,000. kind of stuff.
You just never know what social media post is going to hit it and make you famous. And there's tons of examples out there of ones, like you said, it's a throwaway. I'm just going to put it out there because I think it's funny, and wham, before you know it, there's thousands and thousands of people that have watched it and it's come across their page.
So let's workshop something here. What kind of controversy or craziness or conflict do Chris and I need to generate on our little podcast to expand beyond our base, which I want to say I love our base, and carve out a niche in the mature, by our age only, or mature in that sense, host category, if that is actually a thing?
That's a good question. I don't know what's going like controversy wise, what you could hit on there, man.
Maybe we could go and do on-site podcast from random Royals proposed sites.
Oh, that would actually be really good. And you just have like you're just kind of sitting in lawn chairs. You sit in lawn chairs right on these Washington Square Park, these concrete pads, and you're just sitting there. You just see the mic cords dangling and I think that would be great. Actually, I love that idea. That is so funny. You could do that. You could do that with the Chiefs sites too, but then you'd just be sitting in the middle of the Legends, I guess, because that's where that's where they're going to end up putting that thing. That is pretty controversial. The stadium. I forgot about that. It's crazy how quickly I forget.
It's kind of gone away for a little bit, right? There was that huge wave of both stadiums are going to leave. No, both are going to stay. No, here's a vote. No, the vote shouldn't have been both. What are we going to do now? And everybody's mad, and they don't pass. And then it's kind of quieted down because they thought, we've made a lot of people mad that we didn't want to make mad. And now you start to see the Royals come back. They've got a couple sites again, and they're just testing the waters because they can't afford another PR nightmare like they had.
They were just so happy that we were talking about them winning instead of that initiative going down in flames.
Man, they did. Both teams did not handle that very well. I think that it was just not a very well managed campaign, I guess you would call it. You call it a campaign on how they wanted to handle their stadiums. The plan that the Chiefs put forward was like, we're going to stay here, but we're going to renovate by adding more parking lots. And you're like, all right, well, that's not really what we were kind of hoping for. It's like, we're going to connect the upper deck. Like, cool, you should do that already, but you don't need this tax money for it.
And it was like $800 million for the parking lot upgrades.
You're not getting a roof.
The concourse.
You're not getting anything.
Like, oh, okay.
Right. It's like, we're going to put more suites in. All right, Clark, you and your buddies want to have more places to sit. That's nice. But like the folks of Jackson County, Missouri, I think called the bluff on it a little bit there. It's funny now because when that vote was going on, I didn't live in Jackson County. Now I do live in Jackson County. So I didn't really get a say in all that when it comes to the vote of it all. But like not even to go, like the Chiefs didn't do a very good job in their plans. The Royals did an even worse job in their plans of like communicating where they were going and when it was going to happen. And I think that even the day of the vote, they changed something. We're like, oh, actually, we aren't going to do this.
Right.
And it's just like, what are we? I'm not a politics guy, right? Like I'm obviously not in politics. I know that that's not good. Like I know that that's probably not good campaigning strategy.
I think it went
change the plan.
It went from, are you going to tear all the crossroads down to do this? Yeah, we're going to have to tear all the crossroads down. Oh, wait a second. We're not going to tear all of the crossroads down. We're going to keep a little bit of it. Like, what are you talking about? You can't
down Oak Street or something, and then we're not going to, and
Right. It was just a mismanagement from both parties and both teams there. And then I don't think the Chiefs are going to leave Missouri. They get a lot of tax breaks from having their whole system in Missouri. Like they have the headquarters in Missouri, they have training camp in Missouri, their practice facilities there, their stadiums there. They get tax breaks for that. And Clark Hunt is a guy who is, the Hunt family has a lot of money. They're very frugal in how they spend their money. Like you don't get that much money by just willingly spending it. They're going to be doing whatever they can to get those tax breaks. Kansas is making a push. They're obviously going to use the Kansas side of things to leverage the Missouri side of things. And we're going to have that for the next, what year is it? It's almost 2025, going up to 2031 of just these two sides leveraging and bargaining against each other. But I ultimately think that like nothing's probably going to happen when it comes to Arrowhead. And it's just going to be the same thing of just renegotiating deals and contracts to kind of stay where they are. I do think the Royals are moving. I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. Apparently Arrowhead got the good batch of concrete and Kaufman got the bad batch. I don't know
Right.
how they're messaging that there.
That was
that one was that was crazy. There's like, we have concrete cancer. Like, what do you mean by concrete cancer? Like, are you making stuff up now? Like, I don't know. I know they wanted to move, but like I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of Royals games over the past 2 years. As I mentioned, living in Kansas City, now I live 10 minutes away from the stadium. It's one of those things where it's a summer night and, my dad is a huge Royals fan. We go to a lot of Royals games together. It's one of the things that I enjoy. Kauffman Stadium is I think it's one of the most underrated ballparks in all of the MLB. It's a shame to see like so much like active conversation about like tearing it down and moving, but like I understand where it is, but
it could be the concrete cancer kicked off when the Royals were pitiful for 25 years and there just weren't fans covering the concrete at any point.
That's
a
pretty
great
empty
point. And I was one of the few fans that was there, so I can speak from experience. Love the Royals. Let's roll through some of your favorite teams.
Yeah.
Talk about the Missouri Tigers. What's your opinion about the direction of Missouri football?
Yeah, no, I think Missouri football is in a really good spot. I know some people, I think it's fair to call this season a disappointment for a lot of Missouri fans because they were expecting a college football playoff team, and they're obviously not in the college football playoff, playing in the Music City Bowl against Iowa here. I do think that they're in a good spot. Eli Drinkwitz has recruited very well. Like, he's recruited better than probably any Missouri coach has ever. It's funny, you look at their rankings, like they're a top 20 class in college football. And then you look at the SEC and they're not even top 10 in the SEC. So it's one of those things where it's a really tough conference. Look, in the transfer portal, I think they're doing okay things. They had a couple of freshmen leave and everything like that, but state of college football, like, it's so fascinating to me. And you mentioned one of the adjectives I have in there is college football sicko, as I was watching the Memphis, West Virginia finish in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. What an insane game, by the way. I think it is so fascinating the direction that college football is going. Do I think it's the right or the correct way that it's going? I don't know. But I think the way that they're going with bowl games, playoff expansion, NIL, transfer portal, I think what happens next is going to be wildly interesting to see, and just in terms of the direction of college football as a whole. I think Missouri has positioned themselves in a good spot to be ready for whatever it is. And having a coach like Eli Drinkwitz that is willing to like not be stuck in his ways and to be able to conform to whatever the new world of college football is, I think you feel good as a Missouri Tigers fan with him at the helm right now.
He's not afraid to troll a little bit, use a little social media stuff.
I understand people that hate him. Like, I totally get it. And I think that if he was the coach of the Kentucky Wildcats, I would probably despise him, right? Like, I would probably not like him, but he's one of those guys, there's these guys on every single team. There's these coaches in every single place. If he's on your team, you absolutely love him. If he's against you, you absolutely hate him. So I don't knock it at all. Look, there needs to be Missouri needed some rivalries coming to the SEC anyway. They don't have any natural rivalries in the SEC. He's out here purposely saying stuff about Arkansas because he wants them to be more heated rivalry. Like, he said that. He's like, I'm going to say stuff about Arkansas so we can get a more heated rivalry here. He's done the same thing with Tennessee, where he goes to Josh Heupel and says he stands on business here, Josh. And I totally get how it rubs people the wrong way. And it's one of those things where now that he's winning, it comes off a little bit better. But when you're 6-6 and you're out here, showing up with a lightsaber and a Darth Vader mask to your press conference, you're like, all right, buddy, let's kind of cool it a little bit. But he has calmed down a little bit, but it's still one of those. I do love it.
Don't you think it's amazing that college football is kind of an absolute mess right now, and people love it?
Yeah.
It's a mess because of the conferences are a mess. This playoff format turned out to be a mess. The transfer portal is a disaster. The NIL is not working, and people still love it. And it's because they can talk about it, and they just can't get enough of it. Like you said, the Scooters Coffee Bowl. I mean, really, what are we doing? It doesn't matter. People love it. They love everything about it, and they can't lose. Everybody was going to watch. Don't worry.
I do think what's really interesting, Gabe DeArmond runs Power Mizzou. I did a podcast with Gabe for a little bit. He obviously flipped over to 24/7. So I still talk to Gabe a lot, and he's like the authority on Mizzou when it comes to everything that's going on there. He has told me that there's no more popular time in the schedule than transfer portal time. Transfer portal has completely revolutionized how people consume content. For him, he says he has more page views in these 3 weeks than any time without. Missouri won the Cotton Bowl last year, and he didn't have as many page views as the transfer portal. Like, people love the transfer portal. People love recruiting. That's what makes college football, and I think what makes people so interested in this is the recruiting, the transfer portal, and now that's year round. And I think that's why people just eat it up. They love the drama. Like, they love the Bravo reality TV shows. My girlfriend, Tara, she can't miss an episode of The Real Housewives of any county. She's going to watch it. She's going to watch all of them. She loves the Vanderpump Rules. She loves all of it. So I get it. As me, myself, this is my Bravo show is the college football. Is just what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I'm just happy we're no longer the university that if we beat you, you must fire your coach. That went on for years.
There was a trend there for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, they were basically the Undertaker there.
Talk about the Royals, Bobby Witt Jr., the direction of the Royals. It just seems like they've done a lot of smart things in the last 18 months.
Yeah, I am very glad that they did the contract when they decided to do for Bobby Witt Jr. They paid him a ton of money, the most that they're ever gonna pay a player, and I think they might have got a steal. When you start to look at how well he played in that first year of his contract, this 10-year deal, you could probably argue that Salvi has been a very anchor piece for the Royals team, but I don't know if they've ever had somebody like Bobby Witt to build around in terms of the stardom, and he's already second in AL MVP. If Aaron Judge didn't have a historic year, he probably would have been the AL MVP. He's been everything that Royals fans have wanted and more when it comes down to it. And that's hard because he was drafted second overall. So when you just kind of put that in perspective, I love the way he carries himself. You hear Alex Gordon talk about hey, look, I know a lot of these guys in the Major League Baseball. And when my kids want to buy their jersey and I know them, I'm like, well, maybe we shouldn't buy that jersey. He's like, I'll buy them Bobby Witt Jr. jerseys every day of the week, just because of how he carries himself in the clubhouse, how he carries himself outside of the clubhouse too, I think, more importantly. And look, he's just an overall all around great guy, a phenomenal talent, and the Royals are going all in, I think, to try to make this run here. They traded for Jonathan India. You saw Michael Massey and India both said, hey, look, we'll play left field if we have to. We'll play in the outfield. And if they're in the market for Alex Boehm over there in Philly, they're going to try. They're going to try to make a run here with Bobby Witt Jr. It's one of those guys too, with Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So anytime that guy's on the field, you feel like you got a good shot with him, right? Bobby Witt Jr. kind of feels the same. Like if he's going to be on my team, I feel like I got a good shot with him.
Can't say he's Chiefs all the time. You guys are in on all that. Tell us, what's that one off-season thing that we don't really pay much attention to that makes the Chiefs motor along?
The NFL has done a really good job in recent years, and really ever since I can remember, of making you pay attention all year long. They have mastered that of making their draft matter. That is a destination people want to travel to go see the draft. What other sport are people traveling to go see the draft of? I think it's huge. Just speaks to the popularity of the NFL. I do think that the drafting has been pretty good for Brett Veach. Now, these past couple drafts, you could argue probably haven't been Brett Veach's best drafts, but you look at that 2022 draft that produced a ton of talent that's still reaping the rewards of. Trent McDuffie was an incredible steal for this team, truthfully. They didn't expect him to be there when he was there, and then they picked George Karlaftis where they expected him to be. And so it was one of those things where it all just kind of worked out for the team. And look, this is what happens with teams. You have to be lucky. You have to be good. Those are two things that have to happen to win a championship. I know people don't want to admit that the Chiefs have been lucky, or some people want to say the Chiefs have been too lucky, right? But I think there's a good balance of both, right? The Chiefs blocking the field goal against the Denver Broncos was not lucky. People will see that and they'll say it's lucky. No, that was scouting. They knew how they could get there. They knew how they could block an extra point. They almost blocked an extra point earlier, and they knew how before they blocked that field goal. So that was coaching there. There are some things that are lucky, right? When the Las Vegas Raiders forget that they're playing football and snap a ball when they don't need to snap it. That is lucky, right? So, but you got to be good to put yourself in those positions to take advantage of the luck. I think that's a lot of the things there too. And they've done that. They've put themselves in the position to take advantage of these opportunities that they've had, whether it's the draft, whether it is free agency, and they've had to weather some storms in terms of injuries this year, because if you look, marquee free agent signing, has not played a game yet this year. And Hollywood Brown, he looks like he's going to play this week, but he has not played a game. And I think that that's just kind of a testament of this team is 13-1. Their number one wide receiver coming into the year, Rashee Rice, played 3 games before his quarterback took out his knee, and they've only lost 1 game to a really darn good football team. So I think it does have to do a lot with drafting and how Brett Veach has put this roster together. Look, it's not easy to build a roster around a guy who's making $500 million. You got to do some maneuvering there. So I think that's kind of the construction of this roster is really being tested this year. You can really start to see some of the holes. You guys ever watch Bar Rescue? When John Taffer goes in and he brings on, some of the guys that he knows, and they do a little bit of a stress test, right, to see kind of where. That's kind of what this season's been for this Chiefs roster. It's like they've brought in 150 people, all ordering drinks at once, all ordering food at once. And they are seeing, okay, well, we really kind of need to address over here. We need to address on the offensive line. Maybe we shouldn't draft another tackle. Maybe we should probably sign an established one in free agent so we can have a little bit of sustained success there. Well, we could probably draft over here. So they get in the John Taffer stress test when it comes to this year's roster. And I think that's going to be a big key for this offseason, even going to continue their success, is going to be the roster building aspect of it all.
Let's get to some serious fan decision. I've watched the last 2 Super Bowls in Dallas, Texas, where my girlfriend lives, and we've had Super Bowl parties. I've flown in Jack Stack barbecue, burn-ins, and beans. People go, are you crazy? Are you bringing barbecue to Texas? I go, they haven't had a Super Bowl in so long down here. They don't really know how to throw a party.
Right. Bada bing, bada boom. That was a good one. Okay.
So my question is it imperative? Oh, by the way, we had a life-size Travis Kelce poster.
Good.
Great guest 2 years ago. Friendship bracelets last year, of course. So is it imperative that I maintain the same menu location of the party if the Chiefs get to that to avoid any fan fate interference?
Yeah, I've never been a very superstitious person. I know it's weird for me, for my baseball being one of my favorite sports. I've never really been very superstitious just because I think I find it just too hard to remember all the stuff that you have to do. That's why I have never really been super. Maybe it's lazy. Maybe I'm just lazy in that regard. I've never really been superstitious like that. And I always like to remind people on Twitter, whatever I tweet out about the team does not change the impact of whatever's going to happen.
Good point.
I'll tweet out some stats and like, well, great, you just jinxed it now. And I was like, me tweeting out a stat about Patrick Mahomes does not have any bearing over what happens in this football game. So I like to tend to live my life that way. I think it helps me maybe disassociate from the things a little bit better when things don't go my way, right? I'm already kind of, as a Missouri fan, I have to kind of prepare for the inevitable decline of what's going to happen and the inevitable crash, as I've just kind of conditioned myself to not let the hope get the best of me. But look, you got a good thing going down there is what it sounds like. I wouldn't really mess with it. I wouldn't mess with a good thing. That's also another good motto to live by. Don't mess with a good thing. So, I mean, if it's working, it's working. But for me, I mean, I couldn't remember all that. You remember all that. That's impressive because I don't think I could.
Excellent.
All right, Tucker, to wrap us up here, what's next for Tucker Franklin? Do you ride out this Chiefs fame for the next couple of years or as long as Mahomes is going? Is it going to shift gears a little bit for you? Are the Royals going to be talked about more in the next 5 to 10 years than the Chiefs? And where do you see your path headed?
I mean, we've got a good thing going here at KC Sports Network, man. I love it. What the vision that BJ Kissel has had, not only in just the terms of a new media, I guess you could call it, in how we reach fans and reach people, is what the kind of the Kansas City market needed, not only in the content realm of things, but also the foundation stuff that we do. I mentioned already some of the stuff that we kind of have an event every quarter to help the homeless and feed the homeless at Hope Faith. And that's one of the really cool things that we were able to do with just the people being Chiefs fans. Like, that is the coolest thing, is like people just like the Chiefs, so they help us help other people in Kansas City. Like, that's, I guess, the simplest way that I can put it. And I think that that's incredibly powerful, and being able to do that has been really gratifying. And what I've been able to do, like, look, I like to tell people that I talk to a computer all day, right? Like I just talk to a computer all day and I end up having to get to make a little bit of a difference. But for me, man, I think it's I'm gonna go as long as Patrick Mahomes will pay my bills, I guess. Patrick Mahomes is the reason I have this gig, and Patrick Mahomes will probably be the reason I leave this gig, truthfully. So as long as Patrick Mahomes is kicking, I'm gonna be kicking.
Hey, I want to thank you for being a guest on our small but not so modest show, and we wish you all the best. And we'll be watching, listening, enjoying your work, talking Chiefs football and all things football.
Appreciate it.
Well, Chris, it was a lot of fun to talk to Tucker tonight. He had a lot of great insight and just enthusiasm for what he does in sports media.
Yeah, and it is great after listening to Tucker and realizing he's just in this club now of these people from Trenton, Missouri and Northwest Missouri that have a passion for sports and have lots of great stories and lots of things to tell to us on this podcast. So we had a lot of fun with Tucker Franklin tonight.
Well, we just are wrapping up. This is our 13th episode. And for our 14th episode and final one in this calendar year, we're going to do kind of a retrospective, pulling out some of the cool stuff that we've gotten to do in these first 13 episodes. And then talking about our favorite sports stories from the year, what might come in the year 2025, and just some fan-related stuff. And we'll have fun with that and have a good conversation about that, and hopefully you will enjoy it. So thank you very much for listening to Show Me Sports Legacies.